It was a year marked by big moments. The ongoing Cold War with Russia, the continuation of Reaganomics, and the year where a small event that doesn't usually become national news, like a family picnic on a mountain, would end up becoming part of history forever. Nyleen K. Briscoe was born on the 8th of September 1978 in Orange County, California. By 1983, her parents had split up. Mother Nancy was now with stepfather Kim Marshall, and so Nyleen became Nyleen Marshall. Her biological father, William Roy Briscoe, was in the picture, but he was a non-custodial parent. June 25, 1983 was a Saturday, and this meant that Nyleen, now 4 years old, was with her mother, stepfather, and two siblings, Nathan, 6, and Noreen, 2. They were taking advantage of a chance to all be together on this beautiful summer's day. But only 4 of the 5 would return home. The local radio station, Capital City Radio, had invited the family to an amateur radio operator's picnic. This was situated in a remote part of the Elkhorn Mountains, pretty near to their hometown of Clancy. Here on this inactive volcano range in southwest Montana, wild elk can be seen roaming all year long, and when the sun shines down, its light catches and brightens the green leaves of the dense trees that cover the hillsides. No one could have known that this picture-perfect scene would soon shatter in only seconds a mere few hours later. Nyleen had picked out a yellow t-shirt and shorts to wear that morning. Her outfit matched the bright mood at the picnic, as the adults unfolded blankets and laid out food for everyone to share. People passed around sandwiches and chatted as they stretched out. No one else could be seen around them. Their chosen spot was completely secluded. In between lulls of conversation, the only sounds that could be heard was the whispering of trees as they swayed in the wind. After a while, the children, growing restless from sitting down for too long, asked the adults if they could go and play in the creek, and the adults didn't think twice about letting them do so. The general feeling was that no harm could come to them in this quiet part of the mountains, or so they all thought. It was around 4 p.m. when they set off, a time that would only become significant later when the parents had to report it. Nyleen, her siblings, and some of the other children attending the picnic headed down to the stream, longing to put their feet in the water to cool off. As the others ran ahead, Nyleen, now getting tired, sat to rest on a pile of rocks near the dams that the beavers had built. "Wait here," one of the other children told her. "We'll be right back." Nyleen nodded, grateful to have a chance to pause, a chance to sit and enjoy the peace and quiet of a beautiful day in a beautiful place. So she was left alone, and the others moved onwards. When the older girl came back only moments later, Nyleen was gone. "Nyleen," the children called, hoping she was just around the corner. "Nyleen," they called more loudly. But they saw no trace of her, and she didn't call back. They tried again, and still nothing. They ran back to their families. They returned to the picnic site that just moments earlier had been the scene of such a pleasant Saturday. But the kids were now crying, afraid of why they couldn't find Nyleen anywhere. Where could she have gone? The adults instantly panicked and immediately took to the area to search. As they did, some of them started to look nervously at the rocky cliffs on the edges of the mountains, the ones that dropped off for hundreds of feet. Others looked in an old mine shaft. A little girl could wander in there and tumble. She could perhaps have twisted her ankle and now not be able to move. They noticed all these little things that they hadn't accounted for when the children first asked to play. They now searched more intensively, splintering off to cover more ground. But still, they couldn't find the 4-year-old anywhere. Desperation now growing, they called the police. Their wailing sirens quickly cut through the normally peaceful and serene area. Food was strewn across the picnic blankets, half-eaten bites put down as the adults scrambled to search for the little girl. The cars quickly followed old trail roads, slowing at the twists and turns before finally arriving. Police officers interviewed each person at the picnic. "When was the last time you saw Nyleen?" "Around 4 p.m. "What was she doing before you last saw her?" Sitting on the rocks, over there. Does she have a tendency to wander away? No, she always wants to stay close to us. Was anyone else around other than who's here? No, the adults started. But here, some of the children paused. One started to nod very slowly. The 6-year-old whispered, "There was a man around before. I remember because he was wearing a purple jogging suit. It stood out." Nyleen said that the man told her to follow the shadow. The police, everyone, held their breath. Could this have been the man who took Nyleen? Did he trick her to follow a shadow, maybe his shadow, only to then take her? And if so, where was he? Who was he? And where was Nyleen? The police search escalated, but as night fell, Nyleen was still nowhere to be seen. 2,800 volunteers joined in the search. Helicopters whirred in the sky above, and dogs fanned out in front of them. The canines' noses picked up a scent near Morpin Creek. They followed it, barking loudly, and then, just as suddenly as it had been detected, it heartbreakingly stopped. Infrared heat sensors too found no trace. Silently, the feeling within the police force began to wonder if she had indeed been kidnapped. They called in more specialized search teams. These are people entrusted to find people even in the hardest of circumstances. They combed through the mine shafts and the ponds where lava used to once bubble up. And even though, decades before, people had successfully searched the mountain for silver and gold, mining for profit, after 10 days the search for Nyleen did not go the same way. Here there was no reward to be found.
Ken Gardner was one of those volunteers. Archive news clippings detail the efforts of him and hundreds of others.
You stretch your hands out, so my arm out to your arm, to his arm. Grid searches, huge areas of grid searches. Nothing.
5 days in, and the weather turned, and so did the mood, but not their resolve.
By now you're cold and the weather's bad, and you've lost this hope that you're going to find her, at least find her alive. But you also get this, maybe today. Maybe there's something today.
The Marshall's little girl, with her distinct chipped baby tooth when she smiled, had vanished. The search was eventually called off. There was nothing more that could be done on the mountain. At home, without their daughter, the parents would look at Nyleen's bed, wondering if she would ever sleep in it again. They hoped that she'd make it home before her 5th birthday. They handed out thousands of missing person flyers across the country to help to bring her home, almost in disbelief that the person missing was their very own daughter. A devastatingly surreal situation. Meanwhile, the Shadow Man stayed the main suspect for the police. But just as the daylight disappeared on that first day, so too had all traces of the man. 2 agonizing years passed with no news and no new updates. No one responded to the flyers with any helpful information. The Marshall's other daughter, Noreen, turned 4, the very same age as Nyleen when she disappeared. As they cut the cake, trying to pretend this was another normal birthday, they all noticed the absence of Nyleen's happy giggle around the table. 1985 started with the inauguration of President Reagan's second term, and at almost the end of the year, on a cold November night, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received an anonymous phone call. There was information on Nyleen for the first time since she had gone missing.
"I have Nyleen,"
the caller whispered. The operator was in shock.
"I found her on a road in Elkhorn, so I picked her up and took her home with me."
Just as the operator was about to ask more questions, the call went dead. The mystery man hung up. This was the first meaningful clue since Nyleen had disappeared. Obviously frantic, the parents hoped that the call could be traced, but the police found nothing. Then, 2 months later, a different organisation called Child Find of America received another communication. This time, it was a typewritten letter. It started as if they'd already been having a conversation. I believe this first excerpt is following on from that first phone call. The anonymous author wrote,
I didn't want their person to try to get information from her. All I could tell them was that she was okay. I hope Childfind can get the following back to her family. I picked Kay up on the road in the Elkhorn Park area, between Helena and Boulder. She was crying and frightened, and as I held her, she was shaking, and I decided that I would keep her and love her. I took her home with me.
But the police and Nyleen's family knew better. Some of what the man described he was doing did not sound good. This excerpt is the most disturbing. It starts with the man telling us he gives Nyleen a medicine every morning, but the truth is just abhorrent.
I get it from the bathroom every morning. It is actually a spoonful of my semen. It doesn't affect her physically. I have never murdered her in any other way. She is a sweet little girl, and it's because of how much I've grown to love her that I realize how much her family must miss her. But she is adjusted and seems happy. She trusts me and isn't afraid. We play a lot, and she laughs when we clown around. She smiles and acts coy when I tease her. She giggles when we snuggle, and she hugs me sometimes for no apparent reason. I love her, and I have her. I just can't let her go.
Their daughter belonged in only one place, and that was home with her family. After the letter came what the family was agonizingly all too familiar with, more silence. Then slowly, over the next 6 months, 2 more letters came, as well as occasional phone calls. The postmarks were from Madison, Wisconsin, many states away from Montana, a state that Nyleen had never been to. One of the letters said,
She would gladly recount to you trips to San Francisco, New York, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, Nashville, Chicago, Puerto Rico, and Canada. We were even in Britain for a month last year, and she loved it. Nobody questions passports.
How this person could have supposedly taken Nyleen out of the country, the family wondered.
I have a nice investment income, and I can work at home, so I care for her myself all the time. I teach her at home, and she likes to go with me when I travel. Her hair is short and curly now, and she has really grown. She is about 45 inches and around 50 pounds. She has all 4 of her permanent upper and 2 of her lower incisors at this time. She takes a bath and brushes her hair every day. She eats well. Her favourite meal is pizza and cherry cola. I call her Kay. I'm raising her as my own child.
Her parents were distraught. Was their daughter really alive? Were these letters even real? The FBI managed to trace the calls back to phone booths in Madison, but as soon as they found out where they were coming from, they suddenly stopped. This new silence was harder for the family than the news that at least maybe Nyleen was still out there, somewhere, and the trail again had gone cold. More years passed. Nyleen's siblings continued growing up, going to school, and making core childhood memories without their sister. Her parents tried, as much as they could, to hold on to hope that Nyleen could still walk through their front door at any moment, that she would somehow, someday, return home. For them, ever since that afternoon on the mountain, time seemed to have stood still. What would their daughter even look like now, after all this time? Would she still have that chip on her tooth? Would yellow still be her favourite colour? Would she remember who they were? Other local families remembered Nyleen's disappearance too, keeping a closer eye on their children, fearful that the same could happen to theirs. And then, 6 years later, when the family had slowly started to accept that there may never be any more clues, there came another shock, a surprise confession. A 42-year-old man who had prior convictions for violations said that he had ended Nyleen's time on this earth as well as that of another woman. But after being held for a week by the police, he was let go. Regardless of the confession, there wasn't enough evidence to hold him. In 1990, the famous true crime show Unsolved Mysteries aired a segment on Nyleen's case. This sparked a renewed interest, one that would both refresh people's memories as well as introduce them to the case for the first time. A truly unbelievable discovery would come following the TV show airing. A hotline tip was received from a school student in Bellingham, Washington. They were certain that a girl in their class was Nyleen Marshall. The age matched up. Her sudden arrival at the school made sense with Nyleen's story, and the girl looked very much like her. Police promptly investigated and they discovered even more than they bargained for. The girl was a missing person. She had been born in California before vanishing. She had been kidnapped by her non-custodial father, going missing in 1982, with the case going quickly cold. The girl was identified, bringing the case to a close. But it wasn't Nyleen Marshall. The girl was named Monica Bonilla, and she was finally reunited with her rightful family members. So the Marshalls had to regroup and, once more, building up their strength after it had once again been drained by disappointing developments. As if the pain of not finding Nyleen was not hard enough for the Marshalls, a second tragedy hit in 1995. Nyleen's mother was discovered deceased in a Mexico City hotel room. And although police would initially say it was self-inflicted, the case was later changed to under investigation. But no other leads came through. Nyleen's family tried to navigate their way through losing both their sister and their mother, their daughter and their wife. How much pain could visit just one family? But in 1998, there was one last potential hope. A 19-year-old woman, originally from Oklahoma, came to a New Orleans hospital to give birth. Was this woman Nyleen Marshall? The staff thought that she shared the same facial features, the features of that little girl they had seen on public broadcasts all those years ago. Her nose, her eyes, they all looked similar. Hopeful that this case was finally cracked, they asked to test her blood to compare it with her mother's. Everyone waited for the test results with bated breath. Was it about to be the end of the mystery that had haunted the Marshalls for all these years? The nurse read the outcome in a small, dimly lit room. It read, "Not a match." And the case had gone cold again. All these years later, Nyleen would now be 46 years old. But did she get to grow up? Did she get to see the world because of the man who had taken her? Or did she never leave Elkhorn Mountain after all? Her remaining family often think back to that last journey they made all together, on that summer day where the heat made the back of their legs stick to the seats, of how they strapped Nyleen into the back seat, letting her hold onto her stuffed toy for the journey, of her excitement at the picnic to spend time as a family, the simplicity of her thinking that at the end of the day, her parents would tuck her in and read the bedtime story as they usually did before they whispered goodnight. How she probably hoped for pancakes on Sunday morning. All of these small dreams of a 4-year-old girl that would never come true. All that was left behind was emptiness. Empty mine shafts, her empty bedroom, an empty car seat on the journey home, and an emptiness in the hearts of everyone that loved her.